Afternoon everyone. Just thought I'd have another live session with you today and we can all have a chat once some people actually start coming on board. Obviously I'll be here to answer some questions as well, and we can go through some things that I've found about the A9 over the last week. So say hi if you have joined. I'm just going to put down a comment down here to say hi everyone. And so just let me know as you do come on board and we can actually have a chat, because I want to talk to you about some of the A9 reviews that I've found this week, because I'm still deciding whether to go down that route yet or not. I still haven't made a decision yet, but at least it's starting to get some live reviews in now, so we can have a look at that together and sort of have a discussion about that. I've also got some other rumours that are sort of happening on the Sony end that we can also discuss, and I also want to sort of go through a shoot that I just did on the weekend as well with you all as well, because I just did this amazing glitter shoot on the weekend that I thought we could go through and have a bit of fun talking about how that went, and I could take you through my experiences of how that went with the Sony A7R II using continuous light in the studio. So I thought we could go through that. So let me know where you're watching from. So just say hi. I can see there's a few watching now. So we'll basically start going through some of the things that I've actually found. What I wanted to talk to you about today, I'm going to switch over to my desktop because we can look at that. So if we go to news, I wanted to go through the first impressions. This is by a man called Jan Tilchi, or it could be a girl, I'm not sure, but it's by Jan Tilchi. It's it was originally in the Czech language, so it's actually changed. It's been translated, so I'm not sure how accurately it's being translated, but you'll get the gist of what they're talking about here through this discussion. But basically, he's talking about how he found, or she found, the first impressions of the Sony A9, and there's a stack of pictures that you can get. This was actually from a very big low bow photo. I think you can sort of see up the top where that's actually from, but I wanted to go through some of the images just to sort of show you the difference that they're talking about with it. And this one interests me particularly because it shows the actual size difference between the A7R II and the A9. You can see it's actually quite a lot larger. Hi Bradford, how are you, mate? Nice to see you from the States. Yeah, so you can see there that it's actually quite a lot bigger. The handle obviously is way larger, and I can now sort of see probably where people are saying that it's quite awkward to hold sometimes. If you, just let me see, is this working? The difference in here is a lot less than the difference in there, and I can see how now people like Max Uver was saying that it can be hard to hold if you've got very big fingers, because your fingers would jam inside this area. But I must admit, I do like the camera being a little bit bigger, especially if you're starting to use a little bit of larger lenses. So this could be an advantage, but it definitely looks larger than what the old camera is. They're saying it's only a small amount, but looking at that photo, it's a reasonable amount larger. The other thing too, which I talked about before, this is one area that I do love to look at, is this new control section down here. I do like the ability, or I would like the ability, to be able to control the autofocus through a knob here rather than continuously switching down through menus. I know it doesn't take long to go down the menus, but I think it would be much easier to be able to just turn it there, because I do often change very quickly. If I'm in a static situation, for instance in a church, and I want to go to AFS and then go to AFC if the bride's walking down the aisle, I can now do that very quickly with a control dial through there. So that is a much better idea. Hi Marcus, how are you? Marcus has just said, I wouldn't, as I'm certain the A7 III announcement is in June. I think it would be better, as we don't need 20 frames per second, and the A7 III will be a lot cheaper. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting, isn't it, Marcus, what they're going to do? Jerry Reed said hello from Nashville. Hi, Jerry. How are you, mate? So yeah, so that does interest me. I really do like the idea of that. And the other thing on the other side too is that it has the S and Q settings over here. That really interests me as well, because I do use that a lot because I'm shooting, like I said, fusion video and stills at the same time. That really interests me as well. So I do like having that ability to just quickly switch over there rather than go through those menus. And it takes about 2 or 3 menu pushes through the menu button to get to the S&Q. So it's great that they've now put that on a button sort of right on that side. So I think looking at these, if you had big hands, I think you would be better using this battery extender, because clearly you need something more to hold your hands on around this bottom section of the camera down here. So if you have got large hands, you may be better off to buy the battery grip. My hands aren't large, so I'll be quite fine holding it without that, but be interested to see what you guys think about that aspect of it. They also have released this battery grip as well, which just goes on this side. I'm not sure how good that will be, because I don't know how you'd fit it on a tripod. Plus, also you've got to take that off if you want to remove the battery. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that new battery, this new attachment just for holding it down? It was around about $150, I think, but it is another option if you wanted to go and hold the camera from the front if you did want more of a grip. Obviously that hasn't got the buttons on it, I don't think, though, whereas this full battery grip will have your buttons here that you can shoot in portrait if you are changing from portrait to landscape. So let me know what you guys think about that, whether any of you are using the battery grip. You can see this is the full picture of the battery grip here. You know, you can do your focusing and menus and stuff like that all from here. So obviously that's an advantage as well. You can see on here where it has the S&Q button. So that's a really big advantage as well. And I think that's an extra number here too, because I think the original A7R2 only has 2, but you know, I can't remember, to be honest. But I think it only has 2, so that's another interesting one. So the ergonomics of this camera are much better if you want to work quickly. So they've taken a few of those controls outside of the camera and enabled you to use it from the top, which, you know, I do like if you're working very, very fast. Now I'm just going to go down to some things down here to see what they say about his conclusion. I just wanted to go through the high ISO performance. Well, they're still saying they haven't made any in-depth tests yet, but they're saying from their personal observation, the A9 high ISO performance is very similar to the A7R2, which, however, has higher resolution advantage. So they're saying, this person is saying that it has a very similar ISO rating to the A7R2, but clearly the A7R2 has much higher megapixels. Now, I'm not certain whether, again, that probably will be an advantage if you downsample the A7R2. It's probably still going to have the advantage when you downsample that, because you do gain downsampling it. Just let me check what Marcus has just said. Personally, I hope Nikon bring out a full-frame mirrorless by keeping the D7200 style body and knocking out the mirror. I'm going to talk about that, Marcus, because I've got a page to bring up about that, so we will have a discussion about that fairly soon. Battery life, and I've got a couple of things that talks about that too, so I'm going to go through a couple of things with you guys about that, because it's an interesting discussion. There's another page I'm going to take you through where it talks about the battery life, and it's outstanding, so that could be a really big thing. I think Sony probably have underrated this. I think they've been very conservative in their battery rating for this camera, so we'll have a look at that in another page shortly. But he's saying that the A7R2 is reported to take 290 to 340 photos per charge. In real life, you get over 700 photos can be taken. I'm not sure how the SIPR works. I think they leave the screen on the whole time. I'm not quite certain how they get these ratings, but it does seem to be very conservative. The A9 has 480 to 650 photos in specification, so we should, in regular use, we should see even more than 1,000, and I think that's what people are actually finding, that they are getting way over. And I'll talk about that soon. You can see the battery different sizes here. It is quite substantially bigger. Also, obviously this sensor is a lot more efficient than what the A7R2 is, so I think that's another really big thing as well. The sensor is much more efficient, so you're going to get a lot more out of this sensor than what you can with the A7R2 or the other cameras, so that's a really big improvement as well. And obviously the memory cards, well, we don't need to talk about that. Buffer, I still think, is a non-issue. People are talking about filling this buffer out and it takes 30 seconds to clear it off. Anyone that's shooting 200 and something raw photos, honestly, I just don't know anyone that would do that. I think even sports photographers still time their moment, and they are doing short bursts. knowing when to basically capture it. They're not going to run off 200 and something RAWs, or or 300 JPEGs, whatever it is. So I don't think, personally, if I do get this camera, I don't think the buffer issue is ever going to be an issue with me, because I'd just be shooting sort of 1 or 2 seconds, and 20 frames per second, that's a lot that you're getting. So I don't think that's really going to be an issue. Now, I want to go on to the next article, so you can have a look at that yourself if you want to. But this is an article that I wanted to discuss with you because I just found this article. I just found it this morning. It was used in the real world for, I think, what was the race? It was the Kentucky Derby on May the 6th. So this photographer, does it say Nick Didlick, I think, arrived. He brought Sony A9 mirrorless cameras, and I think he had 7 of them with all different lenses that he'd used to capture this race. But I'm not sure whether, because he's been supplied by Sony, I don't know how unbiased this article is. So, you still have to take it with a grain of salt until you get people that aren't obviously sponsored by Sony to use them. I'm not sure if this guy is, but we'll have to see. But this is the shot that he grabbed of the horses coming down the track, and you can see it's incredibly wet on the day. And the article actually discusses this because this is the setup that he actually took. I think he took around about 7 A9s with various lenses to this race. And you can sort of see when you read this article, oh, by the way, this article this is shared by Sony. I think I got it from DPR Review, the original one. But this one's shared by Sony. Now again, they're not going to show anything yet at this stage that doesn't sort of suit them. So like I said, we have to sort of take it with a grain of salt at this stage. But I thought I'd take you through this article. He used multiple 24-70s and 70-200, and he also used the new 100-400 lens as well for this. If you look down, you can sort of see the gear that he's lugging around. He had 6 A9 bodies to work with, it actually says here. So he's actually working with 6. And he used them with remotes at various locations and 2 handheld cameras. So he held 2 handheld cameras, and he used another 4 with remote access, so he could fire them off remotely. Now, he actually said that it was very, very wet. You can sort of see here that he's actually sitting in the rain, and it's actually very wet, very, very muddy. He's obviously got some sort of remote access that he can fire this off from another location, but he's using 70-200s here as well. Now, what's he saying? He's saying that he used shutter priority on all the shots that he did, and it ranged from 1/2000th of a second, and he was ranging the ISO from 200 to 3200. And he was shooting that at maximum frames per second at 20 frames per second. You can sort of see here how it's wet, so he's covered it with some sort of a bag or something, or a jumper or whatever, to keep the rain off the camera, as it was very wet. So again, I'm not certain how confident he was of having this out in the conditions, but I mean, clearly it would have been rained on over here, and it's obviously worked fairly good. And you can sort of see about this when you look through how it's actually gone. Now I'm going to play this little video here, and you'll sort of see this is captured at 20 frames per second. So that's it actually working. That's the 20 frames per second going off. So it's incredible when you look at that, how it's going on continuous focus. I'll just stop that. And what else is he saying? It's saying the Kentucky Derby was the Sony A9's first major foray into big-time sports photojournalism. His guidance, Dillett's guidance, the camera lived up to its potential. So he's saying that the camera lived up to its potential, and you can sort of see some images that he's taken here. And obviously, they're showing the shutter speed and f11 and ISO 3200, 1/1000th of a second. So you can sort of see the images itself to see if you think that the focus is working good. It does seem to be working really, really well. Although when you read the article, he's saying that the major image that they got was this image back here was slightly out of focus, and I can't see this, what they're talking about here, Something about the eyes are out of focus, so you're going to have to find this and read this yourself. But it's an interesting article because it is the first one like I've seen that's being used in real life, in a real life scenario. So have a read of that article if you can. Just search for Sony A9 goes to the races and you'll find the article and you can have a look at that yourself. Just let me see what Marcus has said down here. I'm actually very skeptical to all the Sony reviews, most of them, but you are the exception. But it isn't hard to pick the Sony shields after a while. Yeah, I know that, and that's the thing, Marcus. You do have to be careful, and that's why I also said this was sponsored by Sony clearly, so they're not going to show any images that didn't work, and that's why at this stage you still have to take everything with a grain of salt until you actually see real-world reviews of what's going to come out. Now, they will have to start coming out shortly because this camera is meant to be released at the end of this month. So you're going to have to start seeing people coming out with other reviews that are more real-world reviews, hopefully soon, that are unbiased. Certainly, if I get one, I'll give you a completely unbiased review and let you know what I think about it. So that's a really interesting article, so you can have a look at that. There's another article which I also found too, that talking about first impressions of how the camera... Oh no, that's the one we looked at earlier, wasn't it? Yep. So we don't have to go through that. This is a DP review one, talking about a real problem is the color output. Now they're saying that they use this camera and there was a real problem with the auto white balance. It tended to change and do funny things with certain colors. So I'm not sure, because if this is a beta firmware of obviously the firmware of the camera is not released yet, so it may be updated, but there certainly was some issues with the auto white balance of the A9. And if you look down, I'm going to click onto this and see if we can find this article. Because if you look down at it, some of the blues was a bit strange. No, I can't get to it now. Let me check here. I'll go to DP review. I might find it here. Yep. Now the interesting thing is too that when I'm looking at these actual images, a lot of them seem to be very underexposed, and I'm not certain why they were so underexposed. But you can sort of see here, this is the outer camera JPEG, and this is processed camera raw. So again, the white balance hasn't done a very, very good job here. But admittedly, if I was doing something like this, I would be probably using a grey balance card or something like that. But the issue that I've heard about this is apparently if you shoot 20 frames per second and your shutter speed is quite high, auto white balance or setting custom white balance is no good to you, because apparently it changes that fast that the light's flickering will change the white balance between shots. So if that's the case, auto white balance becomes very, very critical. Now, I'm not certain how true that is, because I've never shot under like a sports situation like this, under this sort of fake lighting or lighting that has funny color balances. But I have heard that if you are shooting very fast on a high frame rate, auto white balance is no good. So if anyone knows anything about that, they can chime in, or obviously leave a question down below or an answer down below, and we can talk about it through there as well. So that's an interesting thing. So the white balance is a bit of an issue at this stage with this camera. They're saying the noise is actually very, very good. So it does seem to be very, very good in ISO noise, and I think everything at this stage is pointing out that it is very good. According to this article, the RAWs obviously are a little bit noisier, but they do hold a little bit more detail. So the noise cancelling in the JPEG is softening the image out a little bit. But I always shoot RAW anyway. So just let me see what Marcus has had to say here. Dave, how hard is it to use the Sony for video, as many demand videos as well as pics nowadays? Without ever shooting Sony, but curious about them. What in video camera would be similar to the mirrorless? That's why I changed, Marcus. That's one of the main reasons why I changed from Nikon to Sony, because I have to shoot video and stills at the same time. To be totally honest, the way the market's going, I get an awful lot of referrals and work, especially in weddings, and now it's even starting to hit in portraiture as well, that I'm shooting video at the same time has been a big selling point for me. The Nikon cameras can't really do it well at this stage, so they may change, but at the moment they can't. That's why I could only recommend Sony if you're going to do this. Obviously my work is still 80% stills, because that's what I love doing, and that's my main part of my work. But to get work from people, the video aspect has been massive for me. it can be the difference of getting a bride and not getting a bride to be able to offer that fusion part to video as well. So having a camera that I can just flick over and do between both has been a massive advantage. So at this stage, to be totally honest about the situation, I would only stick with the Sony. You could go the Canon route, but then they've sort of made a mess with the 5D Mark IV with its file size, even though they've added log. But then the A9 is now they've taken log out as well, so I'm hoping Sony don't go down that track as well. So I hope that sort of answers your question. If you are shooting fusion though, for me, I think there's nothing better than Sony at this stage. But like I said, I'd change in a heartbeat. If something better comes out, I would move over, no problem at all. I'm not affiliated to Sony at all. Now the color, let's go down to that. So they're saying the thing's good. Now this is interesting because this is color. Now this table is actually blue and it's come out purple. So you can sort of see the difference between the two. It's out of camera JPEG. So if you're shooting JPEG, it's going to be an issue. If you shoot RAW, obviously you can correct for that color balance. But you look at his shirt and what's happening with that table. It's gone from purple to blue. So obviously auto white balance has got an issue. So I'm not certain how that they're going to address that or whether it will be addressed in an updated firmware. There's also updated sample galleries that you can look through this article as well. But it's interesting to talk now that Deeper Review have sort of said about the issue is with the white balance as being an issue, and I'm hoping this is fixed in obviously the release version of this camera. So I wanted to take you through that. There's another article here that I wanted to go through, which was talking about whether you should go for the A7 III or waiting for an A7 III or buying the A9. And there's lots of different people talking about that. And I wanted to sort of think what you guys think about that. Now, if you aren't chiming in now and you're looking at this video later, please leave a comment down below about what you think you'd be doing, waiting for the A7R III or going for the A9. I'm not certain what Sony are going to do, whether they will. I think they're going to have to release something mid-year because they can't have this massive gap between the A9 and then the A7 III with price and also specification. So I think they're probably going to have to do something. So, but it's going to be interesting to see whether they'll keep the A7R2 and then release an A9, a new A7R3 or an A9R and price that very high and just keep the A7 II down in that price range that it is now. So I'm not sure which way they're going to go. So obviously, if you're not in a hurry, it's probably worthwhile to wait. For me personally, like I said, I'm not sure which way I'm going to go yet. As a professional working full time, I can afford basically to sort of jump in more than what a hobby photographer can because I can justify my purchases. So for me, if I want to go the A9, I can basically justify it by claiming it all back on tax and writing it off. So for me, it's not such a big issue. But if you're not in such a hurry, it might be worthwhile to wait and see what Sony release mid-year or something like that. So I'll let you know what I'm going to do over the coming weeks. They're talking about the things that they think that Sony may do, and obviously, do you all believe that Sony are going to release a new A7R III, and will they put things like the new joystick at the back, the larger battery? I don't think at this stage, perhaps that they'll change the sensor in the A7R III to the new sensor of the A9 because I'm not certain that can handle those massive file sizes. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the sensor, whether it's a completely different sensor to what it is in the A9. Marcus said the race is on. A7 III and mirrorless for Nikon mount, and I'm going that way. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Marcus, there's no hurry in what you do. Just take your time and make sure you make the right decision. They're saying the biggest criticism of the A7R2 is the battery life. I mean, people talk about the battery all the time, but I honestly don't see it's that big a deal. Honestly, I put a couple in my pocket. They're that small. It takes 2 seconds to change over. I mean, if I get the A9, I suppose I'll appreciate not having to change so much. But honestly, for me, it's not been that big a deal. And if it is going to be a thing that I'm running for a while, I'll just use an external battery, and then it's no longer an issue anyway. But there's an article you can read there anyway. So if you Google up A7R3 or A9R, a dilemma, you'll see there's a whole discussion going on about that and talking about what people think the specifications will be in the camera and things like that. So it's an interesting article. Now, for rumours, I wanted to show you this because there's big rumours now about the 16 to 35 f2.8 Sony lens. So obviously I think this is going to be announced fairly soon, and they're actually saying that it could be announced within 1 month. And that sounds like a really, really interesting lens. I mean, that will be a great one. Like I said, I like to shoot wide often in churches and things like that, so having 2.8 in that scenario is going to be pretty amazing. The other thing they're saying too, there's a rumour that there's going to be a 135 Gold Master lens. And I think that what they're saying is there's rumours that it's going to be an f2 or a 1.8. Now, if that's the case, this is just going to kill the Zeiss lens because the Zeiss Batis is ridiculously expensive at 2.8. It's $1,999 US. Now, I'm not sure what Sony may price this lens at. And if it is a 1.8 lens at 135, it's going to be massive. So there's strong rumours now that they're going to be released. So we're talking the 16 to 35 2.8 and the 135 Gold Master lenses are coming. So again, Sony are upping their lens offerings very, very soon. So it's going to be an interesting time if you're waiting on those new lenses. Now let's go to Nikon because I saw this article the other day. I'm not sure how many people saw this article. It was by Matt Granger. Because it's the anniversary of Nikon, what was it there? Oh, I can't remember. It's their anniversary anyway. Marcus, you might know what the anniversary is. Matt Granger did a talk about what he thought the way Nikon should actually go. And if you watch this actual discussion, if you just search for Matt Granger, you'll find it anyway. If you look at his discussion, you'll actually find it. He starts talking about the current cameras that are there, and then he actually goes through talking about what he thinks Nikon should go. And the way that he was actually talking, it almost went down the line of having mirrorless in the current camera body sizes of like the D5 and cameras like that. He's not that interested in going for the small body. He wants to sort of make them the large body. So that was a really interesting article as well, what he sort of said. Now it's a video, so you'd have to watch through the video. But it went down, say, getting rid of the shutter, the mechanical shutter, and going down that way, but keeping everything as the body is. I suppose that would keep things cooler because it has got a better battery, and also the ergonomics of the camera would be much better. In some ways, I was interested that Sony never did that with the new A9, but obviously they haven't gone down that route. I do like the things being smaller, so for me that's an advantage because of weight. But a lot of people, particularly sports photographers, do like that big camera, chunky camera to hold on to. So have a look at that. So he's talking about what he wants. He's basically saying exactly keep it as it is, but just change the internals to go mirrorless. So that's going to be interesting to do. Now, I'm not sure how Nikon are going to do it though, because if Sony don't give them those, the sensor, the newest sensors, it's going to take Nikon a long time, 2 or 3 years probably before they could have those sensors in the camera. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. Yes, there is a new 820 on the way, Marcus. I've heard that too, and it's probably going to be an amazing camera. Not sure what sensor they're going to have in that, so it's going to be interesting to see what that has. So have a look at that. That's an interesting article of what Matt Granger said. Marcus also said a bit of a chat about mirrorless, nothing serious, but yes, please, mirrorless in a A7200 style body. Yeah, and a lot of people would love that. They would love to have it in a larger body, and that's why I think a lot of people like the new A99 too, because it is a much bigger body, which would help with overheating too, obviously. And the last one I had was this, which was a new adapter this morning has been announced for Nikon to Sony E-mount cameras. It's Viltrox. They're going to release 3 new electronic autofocus adapters for mounting F-mount Nikon lenses to the Sony E-mount cameras. Now, I'm not sure how well this is going to work because clearly the other one that was released that I think Jason Lanier used and it wrecked his camera. So it's interesting to see how that will go. So we'll have to wait and see when that's released, some reviews, and to see how that actually goes. Marcus said Nikon bought Samsung, so probably developing mirrors around Samsung. I thought that was a rumor, Marcus. Oh, it's interesting. I didn't know that actually happened. So that's basically all the news that I wanted to go through today, because I wanted to sort of just discuss that with you. I wanted to now go to basically the gear that I use, and I wanted to talk to you about how many Lightroom users there are here, because I wanted to show you one of the solutions that I've actually got to use in Lightroom and Photoshop, and also, well, it's a couple of things actually that I use. So I'm going to switch over to this other camera so that you can have a look. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is this RPG keys. Now, I absolutely love this device. This device is the best thing since sliced bread. The only problem is now, I've just heard from the company that they're no longer developing this, and I wanted to know if anyone out there has any other sort of similar system that I can use. So if people are watching this later on and want to chime in, please have a discussion. The thing with me doing weddings, it takes incredibly long time to actually go through 1,000 images that I might do. This cuts that process down probably to a third of the time it takes if I have to do things manually. The beauty with this is you can set this up completely how you want to set it up on your own. And it uses a software program to put the keys in. Let me see if I can open this up just so I can show you how it works. Where are we? I need to find RPG keys. Here we go. So I'll open it up and just show you how this works. I'm just going to have to switch off this screen again for a second. So I'll go to another screen. So how this works, this software that comes up obviously matches that keyboard that I just showed you a minute ago. And basically what it will do is if I click onto a key, it will show you what that key does, and you can choose from stacks of different things like blacks up, blacks down. You can change your exposure up, down. I've actually set the exposure to go up 0.9. And if I press this quick key down here, it will go to minus 0.9. But you can set these keys to go to actually anything. Now I'm going to switch back again. So for instance, all I have to do is if I'm in Lightroom and I want to go to the next pick, all I do is just go next, 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 and that shoots through all of the images. It'll go previous back this way. If I wanted to crop the image, I can just click on here. If I wanted to go up and highlight shadows, I can click on here. I can go tone balances, paste settings, things like that. These top ones will work in things like Photoshop as well. I can go vibrance, I can just reject. If I'm scrolling through, go next, I can just click on the bottom down here and just go reject. So it's an amazing piece of kit. So it's an incredible thing, but apparently once the new Lightroom version is released, so once they release a complete new version of Lightroom, this is no longer going to function for me. So I'm hoping someone out there has another solution to this. So let me know, and let me know what you think. I'm just hoping that he changes his mind and he releases it again. It's just called RPG keys. So it's an incredible option. The other thing that I use all the time as well, and I still do use this, is this Shuttle Pro. You can still buy this device, and I use this in Photoshop all the time. I'll run this by running filters and things like that, or actions. You can set these to run individual actions. My frequency separation, I use this, and I'll hit this to start frequency separation, and this will start to do focusing, or the Gaussian filter. This can move through images and do all different things as well. And you can also use these as different mouse buttons. So the beauty of this is I can just be scrolling through here and working very, very fast. The thing with me is with Photoshop and Lightroom, you've got to move as quickly as possible to get through these things. So using this sort of device is an amazing thing to have. So I just wanted to show you that for the things that I use, my gear today. So let me know what you think about that and whether you think of anything similar that you can find out there. Joshua said, hello, good morning. How are you, Joshua? So I'm going to go back to my desktop because I now want to go to show you a work that I did the other day. So I like to go through shoots and stuff with you. Let me go back to Facebook. I wanted to go through a shoot that I just did over the weekend, which was a glitter shoot. And I just wanted to talk to you about this, and the easiest way of actually showing this is if I just play this and I'll take you through it. I use ice lights for this setup. So I used 1, 2, 3 ice lights, and there was 2 Neo Roto lights which are lighting up from the top. There's one which you'll see up here up the top, and there's also one that lights up the background behind her. You can see the Neo light there. Now, shooting glitter, someone asked me why didn't I use flash. Well, the reason is you can't use flash if you're shooting glitter because it kills the glitter look. It overpowers it and you don't get the right look. So you have to use continuous lighting if you want to get that really soft, sparkly look that you actually get through glitter. So I used this setup on the weekend and it worked really, really well. And I wanted to sort of show you some of the results that I got from that through here. So we can have a look at some of the results here. You can sort of see the beauty too is when I'm using the ice lights and the Neo Rotor lights, they have barn doors that I can just close and move to where it wants to go. Now, if you look at my last video that I've just posted, you'll actually see this shot being done. So you can have a look at that actually being done and see how the light varies when I show how that changes through. But I just wanted to show you how some of these images came out, and the lighting was beautiful. They were shot at 1.8. I'll bring up the details so you can see what they were shot at. It was shot with the A7R II. It was shot at 1/25th of a second at ISO 400 and f1.8, and it was on the 85mm Batis. Focusing fantastic, but basically if you look through the actual images, you'll sort of see the nice soft look, and you're still getting that beautiful sparkle. And shooting at 1.8 gives you a lovely out of focus look with the images. So it worked really, really beautifully. I'm really, really happy with how the results came out, and clearly the girls are thrilled to bits with putting this into their portfolio. Joshua said, doing well, purchased an A7 II 2 days ago and used for 900. Great, bye Joshua. Felt I got a good deal and picked up some glass and an A6000 for my backup for 500. Definitely have appreciated your videos. Thanks, mate. No, glad you're watching it and glad you're getting something from it as well. That's what it's all about for me. That's another one. Basically, you can sort of see that it's nice and soft again. This one's Maddie. Now, you can sort of see that it's given me that beautiful bokeh in the background because I'm shooting at 1.8, so it's left it nice and out of focus. And I used eye detect on the eyes, which works so well with these images. So, it was such a nice shoot. Like I said, you can watch this shoot if you want to with my previous video, so you can sort of see the whole shoot being done. And again, these are 2 of the last images that we did. It just gives you an idea about what you can do if you wanted to set up your own type of shoot. You don't have to have a big studio like mine to do this. You could just do this in a small room because it's just dark and you're using continuous light. You could do this in a small bedroom. So it's something if you wanted to have a go at it, guys. Watch my video and then you could have a go at it yourselves and try it without... You don't have to use such expensive lighting like I did with the Neos and the ice lights. I use the ice lights at the front. One person asked me a question why I use the ice lights in the front rather than bringing in a Neo to the front. The ice lights tend to have a little bit of a softer look, and I preferred that look for this fashion look rather than the Neos. Whenever I'm doing something that I want to have a really nice soft look, I find the ice lights tend to be a little bit better than the Neos. So, but that's just a personal thing. I do use the Neos as well, but if I'm doing this type of shoot, I'll usually use the ice lights at the front. Joshua said, is this with the Batis? Yeah, it's with the Batis, Josh. Yeah, I haven't got the FE85. I've got the Batis, so I'm not changing that. I'm happy with how that is. So I won't be changing that at this stage. Unless something 1.4 comes out, then I might do that, but I'm quite happy with that. So that gives you an idea about that. So try, if you can, to think about changing your shoots, guys. Do something different so that you can post something that's different online to get a bit of attention. I've got quite a bit of attention on Instagram through these, and obviously on Facebook. So if you're trying to get out there and get some work, it's always good to try and think of different ideas. I'm going to be doing the next one with this group is I'm going to do a smoke shoot where we're using smoke and things like that. So that's going to be an interesting shoot as well. Not certain when that will be yet, but obviously I'll be photographing, filming that as well, so you'll be able to see that on YouTube too. But I just wanted to take you through that as well. So have we got any questions that you'd like to sort of talk about before we finish? Have you got anything you want to say about the A9 or any Sony questions or any other questions that you'd like me to answer as a group? Clearly, you can leave a question down below if you want to. Please give this a thumbs up as well. But if you have any questions, leave them down below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So, you know, I always like to answer questions anyway. The Ackle Show said, "Hey David, I'm looking to invest in gear and do both photography and videography." I'm just going to bring these questions up so you guys can see them. I'm looking to invest in gear and do both photography and videography. What would you recommend? I'm looking towards a Canon 5D Mark III or a Sony A7R II. I would probably get the Sony A7R II for that if I had to choose between the two. But look, I don't know Canon well enough to sort of say anything about Canon, so I'm being totally honest. I haven't used Canon. I've only used Nikon and Sony and the Panasonic GH4, and so I can only sort of talk from that aspect, but I do love the files that my Sony gets. I just had a comment on one YouTube video yesterday actually, talking about the shots that I'd shot in New Zealand, saying how amazing that they thought the A6500 did with dynamic range compared to his Canon. So I've tended to find that because I came from Nikon, I've always tended to find that the Nikon did always tend to have better dynamic range than what the Nikon had better dynamic range than what the Canon had, and the Sony was sort of very similar because the Nikons were using the Sony systems inside it, the sensor. So I tend to love to underexpose a little bit and bring all that back, and I found that the Sonys work much better in that respect. So I definitely probably would go down the Sony route if I had to choose between those two cameras. Plus, to be honest, I just find the video is so much more workable than using the Canon. I think the Canon 5D Mark III is only 1080p anyway, whereas the Sony is obviously 4K. I use my Sony all the time for video, and I've found the focusing and everything works really, really well, and I haven't had any overheating problems with it. So that's me personally, so I probably would tend to go that way if I was choosing between the two of those cameras. So I hope that helps. Yeah, so any other questions that you want to sort of get me to answer? There's quite a few watching, so throw some in, guys, if you want to know anything before we sign off for the day. I've got a few shoots coming up over the next coming weeks, so I'll be obviously sharing those, and I've still got some dancing ones that I want to share as well on YouTube too coming up. Joshua said, "Have a great day, David. I'm off to bed." Yeah, it's late over there, I know. It's only early here. It's only 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so it is still only early here. Thanks for watching, Josh. Hope you have a good sleep, mate. Any other questions before we log off? Otherwise, like I said, you can leave them down below and I will get back to you soon. I'm going to be shooting probably every Wednesday, guys. So if you want to log on around about, this time, it'll be always around this time, or I may start doing it a little bit earlier. So yeah, I plan to shoot sort of live each week and give you some news and the gear that I use and things like that too. So so we'll leave it there for now. All right, guys. Well, we might log off, and I'll see you again soon for the next one. Bye for now.